Okay. Objective breakdown. Let's see. Make sure we're live. A little bit late. Sure, we're live here. Having trouble with the kick. Oh my goodness. Shout out, shaking my head kick. Okay. Got to figure out the kick stuff a little bit later. But sorry about being late. Had to do something, of course. If y'all haven't seen me, I was on PC Anime, of course. But today I'm going to talk about Kagurabachi. Now, this was going to be The Boy in the Harem, but I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to do that. And I plan to do the final arc of Black Clover objective breakdown a little bit later as well. But with that said, today I'm doing objective breakdown Kagurabachi edition. Now, I've talked about Kagurabachi before, and I was not really that impressed from the series from what I've seen. But regardless, I thought it was important for me to give it a very fair breakdown of the series with like unbiased eyes, because something that was tainting my initial impression of Kagurabachi is the fact that people were hyping it up, saying like it was the next great thing. All these memes going out about, oh, it already has an anime. Oh, it's going to be the next big manga. There was like a ranking where it was like better than My Hero Academia. So my initial impression of it started off very lackluster because Kagurabachi was looking like it's going to be the one series that will carry the torch for the next generation of manga, especially since Jujutsu Kaisen, My Hero Academia, Black Clover, One Piece, series like that are ending. And when I initially read the series, I wasn't impressed. I didn't see the appeal. I read the first two chapters. And I thought it was cool, but nothing to me screamed generational. And that's the bar that I was trying to kind of hit to generational. And the biggest thing for me as of right now, when I'm reading these new series, is now I have a standard. And it's a little bit of an unfair standard, but stuff like Kaiju number 8, obviously, I remember reading that for the first time. But as of right now, the new series that I think will be the biggest and most quality series. Oh, I just got a message. Okay, I just got a message. Sorry, this is an important message. Sorry about this. Mm, got a baddie. All right, we'll see what's going on. I don't know what's going on with that, but what was I saying? Oh yeah, I'm kind of comparing it to the bar that I think Kogorokugai is right now as the next kind of big manga that is going to kind of make waves, right? So with that said, because of that standard, didn't I didn't feel like I'm witnessing anything special, but I took a step back, decided to read the 13 chapters of Kagurabachi, give it a fair opportunity to really diagnose what I'm seeing, because I think that's really important for the objective breakdown. And I decided to do that. I decided not to compare it to anything. And here are some of the things that I want to say about the series. First things first, Kagurabachi, in terms of the art, from my personal opinion, this is more subjective, but from my personal opinion, I don't think the art is as great as other arts that I've seen. Okay, best way to put it. I don't think it's as clean. I think some of the facial expressions can be very simplistic at times, and I don't think it's consistently great. Now, I do think it has some really good moments of great art, especially when the swordsmen are utilizing their abilities in a fight. But other than that, I wouldn't go, "Hey, this is one of the greatest art pieces I've seen." Like, if I'm comparing it to something like Black Clover, for example, or again, something like Gokurakuga, or maybe even Kaiju number 8. So, the art doesn't blow me away. As for the dialogue and the lines that I see in terms of the what the characters are saying, I think some of the lines are a little bit okay. Like, for some reason, every time I hear someone say anything, I don't think it kind of reflects the moment as well as it could be. And this could be maybe a harsh criticism. Sometimes I think the lines are a little bit corny. I think sometimes the lines itself are doesn't feel like a human is speaking it. It feels like a character is speaking it. So that's a slight critique, but overall, the dialogue and the art, I'm not impressed by it. Now, with that said, there's a lot of elements of the story I could see why people enjoy, and I'm not even angry at people kind of creating a fandom for it, because once you start a precedent of the story that people can follow, and one second, sorry about this. All right, important message, okay? But once you set a precedent of a story that people can follow and kind of build onto the lore, it really gets fans invested. And that's something you always want to try to do. You want to start the journey and have expectations for the journey that you're about to see. And Kagurabachi does do that to its credit. I think it arguably does it better than some other series, like the series with the that one character who wanted to be a manga fighter, and then there's a demon there was like a demon organization situation. I forgot what that manga is called. I think it does it better than that. It does it better than like something like Aliens Arena. I think I would argue it does it better to that smartphone Death Note type series. So there's a lot of new manga that it just does it better than. Arguably, I would say it probably does it better than Mama Yu Yu in terms of setting up a journey, a story that people can immediately get invested in. Because the story that we're about to follow when it comes to Gagurabachi is a story of revenge, but also a story of finding certain things, not only for yourself, but for for your family, but also for the world, right? You know how people went on the journey to find the Dragon Balls, for example? Well, the main character of the story is getting revenge for his father because his father died. He was a very important man. It follows the premise of the character's father being the most important individual in the entirety of the series. He died. He created tools, he created swords that were extremely special and extremely powerful. And these swords are things that he has to find, not only because he needs to take out the people that killed his father, but he also gets to get the swords because those are his father's legacy, and he doesn't want his father's legacy being tainted because of how the swords may be potentially used. One thing that they play into, which is common when it comes to like swordsmiths that get introduced to anime with like the good guy characters, is a swordsmith outline how these swords are tools for protection, tools for peace, not tools for killing. You see this all the time in swordsman anime, and this is how the story starts. So you already kind of get the sense of what path that the character is following and his reasoning behind taking this so serious beyond revenge. So there's a two aspect thing for the main character. There's the aspect of getting revenge for the people who killed his father, but also protecting his father's legacies and abiding by the moral code that his father created for him, of swords that are meant to protect. So he has to get the sword as well and get his revenge. So you already can follow the journey. It's a journey to find the swords. It's the journey to find revenge. So you're gonna meet a lot of characters. You're gonna see interesting abilities. You're about to see these unique swords that all will have their own unique characteristic for itself. So that's something that Kagurabachi kind of sets the precedent for pretty early on in the series. So you could definitely appreciate that to start off with. And I did, for example. So when I learned this and we understand that the main character, also to kind of put a caveat for this as well, is that the main character knows a lot about these swords, and the main character also has a sword that is different from the other swords, unique to him. So there's a uniqueness to the main character enough to make the journey special to him, but also special to us as an audience. Hey, what's good, no cap prince? What's good, my boy? So this is important. The reason why it's important to him or important to the audience is that everything that we're about to see from his side, from his story, utilizing the sword will be very different from how the swords we're about to see are utilized and are kind of frame or characterized throughout the story, because he has a unique individual sword that is not talked about. So the lore of the sword will constantly be expounded upon, and there's going to be a way for the character to really get stronger and become more important than the other individuals that have the sword. So the journey set itself out, and the journey is interesting. Step one, good step. Another aspect of the story is kind of figuring out what this world is. And as a coolest world, it's a world of sorcerers and swordsmen. Well, more of a world of sorcerers more than anything else, because the only swordsmen that we find out about in the series are the ones that have a possession of the main swords. I think something that is always fun when it comes to magical series is the opportunity to create a different power system utilizing your own imagination to kind of run wild. You're not restricted in terms of the things and the abilities that the characters can do, which gives you the opportunity to get as imaginative, I don't even think I said that correctly, not gonna lie, as possible when you're writing other characters that will be introduced later on. And we see that right off the bat as we find out characters who use like plant-based abilities for sorcery. We found out characters who use dolls as like explosives. We found out characters who use teleportation abilities. So all these characters have a unique sorcerer. They kind of set out what this kind of entails. It's like spirit energy, and the spirit energy is something you utilize in combat. So a lot of things is going to revolve around learning their abilities and how to counteract that. So it's cool, man. It's not complex and unique, and that's a standard that I'm sure a lot of people would appreciate, like a unique power system, but it's spirit energy, it's magic. The way you're going to encapsulate the audience is reaching your bag for the imagination. Now, they start out well with the sword aspect, in the sense that all the swords are very unique and are connected to an element. We have our main character sword connected to water, and then our the first sword user that we find is connected to the clouds, which is connected to water, ice, and lightning. So all these swords are connected to a specific element and a specific kind of archetype, I guess. I guess that's the best way to put it. So all the swords are going to have very unique abilities that will be very interesting, probably elemental based. So that's cool. But when it comes down to the individuals that are other types of threats, you have to make the magic and the way they use magic interesting enough to distinguish yourself as a series. This is very important because it really makes the series stands out more. Because I don't think the main character really stands out from any other main character that I've seen. I don't think the villains or the story premise is really that different from anything I've seen. But they can play into the story tropes that we're familiar with and just make it more dynamic. And we've seen that work. For example, Black Clover and My Hero Academia had followed very specific character story archetypes, especially Black Clover, and was succeeding with what it was doing because it still made itself its own. So what he's gonna have to do is gonna make the aspect of spirit energy, utilize spirit energy, strategies, the individual abilities. He has to make it his own for this story to really pop out the page. Now, another thing that I want to point out in terms of Kagurabachi for me, from that I've gained so far from reading the series, is that so far the biggest story tropes that I've seen, or this is what I'm gonna say instead. So far, even though the story tropes that I've seen are not that different, right? We got a evil organization that stole items from dad. We have dad that is the most important person in the world. We have a society of peace and like normal society. And I appreciate the normal society, kind of normal modern technology society as well. But we have normal society and we don't want the public to kind of see what is going on in terms of the sorcerers. We have a war back then that changed the landscape of society today. We have a military organization that is in charge from keeping the peace against this evil organization. We have a character of the friend that is a secret badass from back in the day, and he's one of the strongest characters in the series, who's like his mentor. We have this a character trope, which is pretty not as uncommon as you think, but we have the female character that has a very special trait that is used for experimentation, and that the main character comes across. He doesn't know anything about her, and he begins to like her as a character. What's good, Miles? What's good, my boy? Hey, Miles, if you're caught up with Kagurabachi, come and want to pull up, let me know. Talk about the series, but so we have all these story tropes. We're all very familiar with these story tropes, in terms of like how they've been used, and in the scope of thirteen chapters, I think they don't flesh out the story tropes enough, because the story tropes you can use a lot in a lot of the series, but I think they don't really kind of bring up how interesting these story tropes are for the story, right? So this is what I mean, right? So first things first, we got the main, and you could argue that this could have been introduced later on in terms of expounding upon his role in the story, or maybe even a backstory will kind of give us more expose in terms of who the dad is, but kind of building up the dad a little bit more as an individual would have been able to would have hit harder for what happens next for the story, for his father dying, of course, because we got brief interactions between the dad and his son. Yeah, the dad was kind of goofy, but you don't really feel anything for their connection at the start. Now we understand that the dad has to die. We understand you have to really kind of set the precedent. But if you were going to set a situation where you want the dad to be, his story with his son to be more impactful later on, I think what you should have done is you should have started out and give as little information about the dad as possible. And then once you give out that information, you sprinkle out his dynamic and who he is and his character later on, if you really wanted to get to the action as quickly as possible. Otherwise, I would argue that you should have kind of stuck with the story of who the dad was, for Kagurabanshi, why he's unique, and kind of sprinkle out hints on how his role in the story is going to impact the rest of the story moving forward. I think that would have made his death, and I think it would have made his impact larger. But maybe that's a nitpick. But that's something I think that would have been good. And I'm just bringing out all these different story tropes to really set the stage for why at least some of them should have been flushed out more for the story itself. So that's one thing that potentially could have been flushed out more. His relationship with his dad, who his dad was, what he means for the story, all that. That would have been great to start out with, because there just wasn't emotion. I didn't feel any emotion between the two characters. With that said, the next thing that you kind of want to potentially flesh out more is the aspect of spirit energy. So they introduced spirit energy, and it could potentially get introduced more later on. But there's been quite a lot of battles, pretty important battles so far. And I think the way they kind of explain spirit energy is that you have it and then you use it. Now, the swords allow spirit energy to manifest, but how does a sorcerer use it? Where, when it comes to formulating your ability, how does spirit energy manifest to your specific ability? I think that type of stuff would have, and I think explaining that type of stuff a little bit more and fleshing it out, especially considering he has a confrontation with individuals. He actually has a very important he has an interesting confrontation with a sorcerer. The first one he doesn't technically fight because he kind of left, but the other one using lies bombs, that was the perfect opportunity to kind of explain the way spirit energy is used at that time to kind of flesh out this lore, because spirit energy is what most of the characters in Kagurabachi are going to be using. His sword works very differently from all the other abilities that we're probably going to see. So you spend time understanding how the magic works in the series and how it takes a very special individual to utilize this magic, because the bomb user kind of indicated as himself that he's a very special type of sorcerer, a strong type of sorcerer. And we see these different sorcerers throughout the series, but we don't understand what their impact truly is. Was good thing, because we don't understand the value of utilizing spirit energy in a very specific way. We know some people are strong, we know some people are weak, but we don't really know anything about the utilization of spirit energy. And the reason why you want to explain it very quickly is because the most important aspects of combat in the story and the power system will revolve around a very different way of utilizing spirit energy from our main character, because he has a unique sword that uses spirit energy very differently because it manifests its spirit energy. So I think if they would have kind of established that, especially considering spirit energy is such a simple term, right? Like, what is it? I think Yu Yu Hakusho uses the same term, right? Like spirit energy, like Jujutsu Kaisen utilized curse energy, but JJK really tries to establish really quickly that curse energy is a very unique form of power that you get from negative emotions, of course. And the way that I mean, JJK is just a goat at that, so I won't even compare it to JJK, but if you're going to use a very simple term, a common term, a very simple thing to understand, you want to make it very clear that this type of power utilized in this world differentiates certain types of individuals. And the way they use it in the series will determine their capabilities. As of right now, we don't have standards of strength. The only thing that we know is that certain characters are strong and certain characters are weak based off opinions of the characters. You haven't laid out how the magical world is utilizing the spirit energy. So that's just another thing. I'm just throwing things out there, right? Another aspect of the story that I think would have been um interesting to flush out potentially is to flush out the fact that the evil organization, or I'm not even gonna touch upon. I'm gonna let them cook on the evil organization, so I'm not gonna touch upon that. But at the very least, you could flush out the aspect of the the new girl character that gets introduced, who is obviously, she's new, she's getting chased by someone, so we know something is up. She didn't want to reveal who she is. I think you should have definitely flushed out a little bit more in terms of her relationship between the characters, because the only thing that we've seen is him protect her from this one situation, then him go take her to 3 food shops, and then she gets kidnapped again. So building character dynamics and character relationships will make the situation and the emotional connection matter more, because I think in almost any situation, a story where a little girl is kidnapped for immortality and they experiment on her and they cut off her limbs, that's going to resonate immediately. But in order for it to take it to the next level, we need to see why the main character cares. Like, he's just kind of a good guy, but we want to take it to the next level, and that's going to take more interaction, more communication, stuff like that. I think Kagurabachi from the first 13 chapters just moves very quickly in terms of story point to story point. I'm not necessarily against that. I'm not necessarily against that. But it's hard to resonate with the story and the characters if you don't truly connect with anybody yet. I don't connect with any character in the story. I think some things are cool. I think the battles are cool. I think the fighting is cool, but I don't resonate with anything. I don't like the main character. Everything that I'm seeing from him, I don't think and I don't think is fleshed out enough. The only thing that I really know about him from what that's fleshed out to an extent is he's kind of stoic, right? It's kind of stoic. He doesn't say much, but he has other interesting aspects of his personality that could have been built on. Like he's kind of he's kind of witty, kind of a smart aleck a little bit. Some in certain situations, he's a good strategist. His knowledge of swords and its abilities, I think, kind of could have been expounded on a little bit more before his battle. And that knowledge is obviously important because he was fighting him, and then he kind of knew what he was doing, and then later on, we find out that he kind of knows everything about all the swords. Like we could have built up that a little bit more in terms of his interaction against the swords. All we knew is that he wanted to go against the swords. So ultimately, I think the story so far is not that unique. I think there's intrigue of the journey, which is very fair. I think none of the characters are that unique. I think all of them are interesting enough. They fit their archetype. I think a lot of things just fit what story points that need to happen for the story, but not of it. Nothing is kind of grasping onto me as a narrative that I'm being getting invested into as a fan. So the plot itself, with the journey of the characters, and I'm gonna break everything down piece by piece in terms of everything regarding Kagurabachi because there's only 13 chapters, but I'm gonna go onto the categories. From what I've seen from the art, I'm not that impressed from the art. If some people like it, fine. I think some of the characters look very kind of bland at times. I think certain situations look pretty bland. I think they have moments of great art opportunities when they're using sorcery specifically and when they're using like the swords specifically. But when it comes to the character designs and the character expressions, that is not something that moves me at a consistent basis. I would say the theme for the story so far is very simplistic in terms of like the main character is kind of just like a good guy, basically. He doesn't, and in terms of like what the weapon represents so far is something I can understand. A weapon, a sword, a powerful sword like this. There's a question being asked so far in the story: is the purpose of the sword? Our main character thinks it's the purpose to protect, the purpose to kind of heal a lot of, or not heal, but the purpose to kind of change society for the better. And then there's another aspect of it where it goes like, oh, the main antagonist that we've met so far thinks that it's a weapon of to kill, weapon of destruction. Simple theme, nothing crazy, but we kind of see what we're talking about. I thought Kagurabachi was just a meme. It is just a meme, but some people say they really like it, and then it gets like higher ratings. Um, I don't I just don't understand the aspect of making a meme more popular than it should be, but it is what it is. I gave it its fair opportunity since a lot of people are saying it's the greatest of all time right now. That part is a me for sure. But the theme of the story so far, in terms of that aspect of like the meaning of a sword and the meaning of a weapon, is kind of simplistic so far. So nothing crazy. To be fair, you don't need a crazy theme right at the beginning of the story. Some stories wait until later on to make the message of the story kind of impact more. The main character just wants to kind of be a good guy right now, even though he's kind of stoic. The setting of the story, a modern, like Japan-ish style. The world itself, like there was a war years ago that changed the way our current society is structured in terms of peace. There's a governmental structure that helps ensure the peace to keep the public away from sorceries. There's an understanding, oh, there's an evil organization and an underground of evil villains, of course. So that's cool. Like it's nothing crazy. It's stuff we've seen before. The setting is nothing crazy either. You said, yeah, I've been hearing the action is cool, but the story and concept are fairly generic. So your assessment seems spot on. It is. It is honestly. The characters so far, none of them wow me. None of them are that interesting, in my opinion. All of them fit like archetypes that we've seen before. The most interesting characters I would give them credit for is the little girl who was introduced, who got her limbs cut off and is experimented on because she's immortal. Her lineage and the fact that she's dealing with so much makes her an instant interesting character. So I'll give Kagurabachi credit for that. And then we got our main villain character so far in the story that has a very nasty personality. He seems a unique backstory that happened to him in the past. He's very brutal, he's very archaic, and he sounds like he likes to get down to business. So he's an interesting character so far. Characters overall, nothing crazy, but there's some potential to build on for the characters that are cool and interesting. So give Kagurabachi credit for that. And the plot, the journey to find the seven swords or the six other swords to kind of get revenge for his father and f- retrieve the weapons that are meant to protect. So we're about to find more lore about the what the swords mean for society. We'll find more lore about sorcery and its and lineage. We'll find all the characters and why they did what they did. So that is basically all I had to cover in cards to Kagurabachi. Tank, you said it. I guess the internet found their next Morbius. That's what Kagurabachi is from what I've seen so far. It's kind of a meme. There's nothing crazy to talk about when it comes to Kagurabachi. It is interesting enough to kind of get a handle and to enjoy at a consistent basis. And the casual fan will find something to intrigue. If you don't look into it too in depthly, you can just enjoy the action, enjoy the story points that will continuously progress, but you don't leave the page going like this is one of the greatest things I've ever read, right? You won't get the impact you would get from a chapter 1 of Naruto, right? You won't get the impact you get from the interaction of Deku getting bullied by Bakugo and then meeting All Might and then saving Bakugo from a slime monster. Like you won't get all that build up and a meaning for it, but you will be entertained for what it is, and there's nothing wrong with that. And yeah, thank you. You got it right. Basically, turn off your brain. So that is all I got from my objective breakdown for Kagurabanshi. I'll try to do one for the boy in the heron. I'll try to watch that movie so I can kind of break down that movie and how good the movie is. I might either do that or I might do like a full arc so I can have a longer conversation about things going on. I'm thinking about doing the Black Clover final arc, but I'm going to wait until because the new chapter comes out December 24th. So I'm gonna wait until the 29th to do my Black Clover final arc review. I think what I'm gonna do next, I'm trying to think of potentially stories that I want to do an objective breakdown because I'm not gonna do entire manga, right? I'm just gonna do like very specific elements of stories to kind of break down and see how good it is. uh do one on Chainsaw Man Part 2. I'm gonna wait for Chainsaw Man to kind of keep on cooking. I'm gonna take a little break from Chainsaw Man. I let it cook and kind of let the story come out. I want Chainsaw Man to completely finish so I can have a full opinion. Part 1, Part 2, I mean, at this point, up in the air, but I'm very curious to see what they do. I think I might do one. Maybe I should do one of the Jujutsu Kaisen Shibuya arc. Maybe I have do a rewatch. Rewatching JJK might be a move too. Maybe I should just wait until JJK Shibuya arc is fully animated. We got what to ooh, I know what I should do. I know what I should do. Re-watch slash reread of One Piece Wano arc. One Piece Wano arc, I've heard mixed opinions about whether or not it is good, whether or not it is great, whether or not it is bad. So I'm going to do the One Piece Wano arc. I'm gonna rewatch it. I'm just gonna enjoy the One Piece anime and rewatch it and probably do that. If I can't, That's a lot of episodes. If I can't rewatch enough in time, I might just do the reread instead, actually, because that's quicker. But that's all we got for today. I'll probably drop a clip at some point. Shank, appreciate you guys. Appreciate everybody else who tapped in today's objective breakdown. We'll be back next week, Friday, of course. And also make sure y'all tune into all the other content. We'll be back with the BSS episode next Tuesday. It should be a very interesting episode. And a lot of fun things in mind. A lot of fun things in mind. Y'all have a good one. Take care and peace.